Hey guys, welcome to another video review of a Hanayama die-cast puzzle. So I hold in the palm of my hand a truly beautiful puzzle. This is called the, I hope I can pronounce it correctly, it's called the EQUA or EQUA? EQUA, it's spelled E-Q-U-A. So I'm not quite sure, what the proper pronunciation is. I guess EQUA. And this is supposed to be a level 5 difficulty, although depending on when you bought it, whether it's in Japan or maybe the United States or Europe, it can be classified as a level 6 as well. But whatever Hanayama's classification, this is definitely one of the hardest puzzles that they have ever engineered. Much more difficult than many of their level 6s. And once I kind of explain how to hopefully solve this thing, in other words, to disassemble and then reassemble it, I think you'll understand why. So first of all, this is a beautiful finish. It's like a very dark, like metal, almost like a dark chrome. It's very striking. When you open the box, there's a little tiny introduction sheet, which states that the inspiration for this is like a planet. This is a planet on the inside, surrounded by its rings. So almost like perhaps Saturn or something like that. And the theme of the puzzle is called Heavens. I can't tell you. I don't know whether there's a hint in the name or the theme or whatever, but maybe the only heavens that has anything to do with this puzzle is that you're going to wish that you died and gone to heaven to stop having to work on this thing. And I also don't know what EQUA really means. It sounds like equality or equal, but I'm not quite sure whether that's a hint or not. Okay, so there's a lot of YouTube videos on how to solve this, and there's a couple of pretty good ones. I'm adding mine to the mix because having just solved it and then also looked at all their solutions, hopefully I can again take my time and really show you all the different angles for how to get this done, because this is a pretty tricky thing, a pretty tricky puzzle. So let's kind of set the stage. So the first thing you should know about this puzzle is that it consists of a outer ring system, and these are like the frames. Okay, we call these the frames, or I'm going to call them the frames. It consists of an outer frame with various ribs. Okay, so we'll call these the ribs here, okay? And on the inside are two pieces that are C-shaped and they interlock. And obviously the open end of the C is a gap, and you can use that to move back and forth. And then the back end is closed. So two C-shapes interlock together. One of the C-shapes has the engraving Hanayama and the EQUA engraved on one side, blank on the other, and the other C has nothing engraved on it. And so the challenge is to somehow get the inside of it removed and taken out, and then to put it back in, of course. I can tell you right now that the frame is all in one piece, so there's no hidden tricks of trying to disarticulate frame. It is one piece. You have to work around it. So why is this puzzle so difficult? Most people agree it is one of the most difficult Hanayamas that I ever made. Okay, so the reason for this, and at this point I'm going to begin the process of solving it. So spoiler alert coming up, and please stop if you don't want to have the solution essentially ruined for you. And again, I've solved it a couple times, so I'm pretty comfortable with it. But there is a certain element of luck, so I hope I don't I hope I don't screw up too bad when I'm actually trying to record this on this take. So there's going to be some challenges. Number one, this thing's all in black, so I put up my white background, so hopefully you can see it a little bit better. It's very difficult to sort of record this on a dark background, so I have it on a white. So number one, hopefully you can see all the different angles, and it comes out looking pretty well. And then, again, number two, there is a very tight movement sort of quotient. I don't know what the right word is, but the give of this puzzle is very small, meaning that the space that you have to actually get this thing to work is super tight. And so sometimes there's not a lot of give, in other words, hardly any give in this puzzle. And so you have to be pretty perfect to get this thing to slide apart. And so hopefully I can show you how to properly wriggle and get it apart. The only other puzzle that I have from Hanayama that has something similar to this is the Trinity puzzle, which in its own way has about as little give as this one. But this is much harder, in my opinion, than even the Trinity puzzle. So why is this difficult? Getting back to my original question, here goes. In order for you to solve the puzzle, you have to actually get the inner core, the inner two C-rings, in a extraordinarily specific position. If you don't have it in the perfect position in relation to the frame, it becomes impossible to solve. And obviously, if you don't know how to solve it, it's really, really difficult to find that perfect position, which is unlike a lot of other Hanayama puzzles where the starting position really may not be as important, and you're sort of encouraged to play around with things and look for moves that may or may not, help you, and then just experiment. Here, there's not a lot of experimentation. If you're in the wrong position, the game is over before it's really begun. So I have it already set up in the perfect position to begin actually the process of disassembly. And so let me highlight to you what this has to be. So number one, this is of course symmetrical. So you have, the three ribs meeting in the center, the three ribs meeting in the center. There's four such centers. The key here is that one of the ribs, okay, there's a whole bunch of them. I believe there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's anywhere from 9 to 12 perhaps. But one of the ribs is slightly thinner than every other rib. And this is not an especially obvious thing to pick up. And that is actually the key upon which this entire puzzle depends. So I can't really give you any technique to find where the thin rib is. Other YouTube videos, they actually have to use calipers to measure which one of the ribs are actually thinner. The difference ranges from about 0.4 to 1 millimeter thinner depending on where you measure. So it's really, really tiny. And I'll be honest with you, it takes me a while, even knowing, what to look for, it takes a while to just kind of figure out where that thin rib is. In this case, the thin rib is right here. This is it. Understand, it also tapers, meaning it's only thin here. As you follow it, it begins to widen. And by the time you get to the other area here, it basically is symmetrical and it's thick again. So hopefully you can kind of tell the difference when you look at it from this angle, how these are all about the same size, about the same thickness. But if you were to take a look at this, it's just a little bit subtle, but this part here is a little bit thinner, okay? So you have to find that area because this is the rib that's going to be used to get the inside of the inside planet of the 2C sections out. You got to work here. You work anywhere else, that 0.5 millimeter basically will prevent you from getting it done. So I don't quite know how to feel about that this entire puzzle is essentially dependent on something so sneaky and so subtle. I suppose if you just continuously try to do it over and over again, you might get lucky. But I think it's a little bit of a cheat because not knowing how to solve it, it's one thing if you go on YouTube and you figure out how to solve it, you get all the instructions. But not knowing how to solve it remember that part of the challenge of any of these puzzles is to try to figure out the sequence of moves through sometimes trial and error of how to unlock everything. And if your sequence of moves isn't working, not because it's the wrong sequence, but even if it's a perfectly correct sequence, but it just so happens that you're in the wrong place and you've missed this little tiny thinness, then you may very well never ever solve it. And so I don't know, again, how I feel about how fair this particular puzzle is. But moving on, okay, find where the thin rib is and then orient it like this so that it's kind of like facing you in the horizontal plane. Now, second step, you see that there is these little knobs. So each of the C pieces of metal has this little knob right here. I'm going to call this the nipple, okay? So they have these nipples. There's nipple number 1 right here, and on the other side, this is nipple number 2 right here. And these nipples are small, but extraordinarily frustrating and treacherous, because these nipples are going to give you hard stops where you're trying to move the inside of the inside 2 C pieces, okay, the inside metal. And you need to have this nipple in this quadrant of our system. So again, this is the thin rib, and you need to have this particular nipple right here underneath it if you can, okay? Finally, if you look to the side right here, you need to have this particular orientation, Hanayama up top, EQUA down below. So this is the C arm, this is the C shape, right? C piece, C metal piece number 1, C metal piece number 2 without any engraving. And the C part has to open up against this rib. And so you have to maneuver the inside of it so that the open portion of the C is facing the thin rib right here. And if that's the case, here's the thin rib, here's the nipple of the other C piece in the middle, and then you can see that this is the opening of our printed C piece. And if everything's perfect, the nipple will sit right below the thin rib right here, and if you look to the side, you're going to see the engraving here, okay? So again, just showing you exactly where everything sits. Nipple below the thin rib, and then orientation, engraved C right here. Just take it, I'm going to take my time. I think some of the other YouTube videos move a little bit too fast here, because if you don't have this orientation, your little adventure is going to be over before it even begins. So I'm going to repeat again. You're going to have this little nipple right here below the thin part, the thin rib, and then just to check, make sure that the engraved portions are facing out this way, okay? Now, suppose you don't have this in this particular orientation. How are you going to do it? Well, the pat answer obviously is you have to keep twisting and rotating on the inside until you get to this perfect position. And I've spent a lot of time showing you exactly what it looks like. And so it's your first job to make this happen for yourself, okay? Now, as you're doing it, you may come against hard stops. So believe it or not, there is a technique to manage the nipple piece so that you can go underneath the ribs if you get stuck. It's important here to maintain orientation because it's easy while you're trying to address moving the inner core to lose track of where the thin rib is. And again, this is not a very easy thing to tell. And so, you could very easily lose track, and then when you finally get the nipple managed and moved along to continue rotating, you've forgotten where to rotate to. I don't quite know how to get around this difficulty, other than maybe if you're just beginning, you can maybe put a little piece of tape, a little tiny tape in the area so that you'll always know where that is. It does make the orientation solving a lot easier. So how do you get around the problem if you come against a hard stop? Like right here, for instance, let's just say, for argument's sake, I want to move this nipple from this side of the bar to the other side, right? So what you do is, here you have a hard stop. You can't do it. But what you do is you slide it away from the corner, right? Away from the center, so to speak. you slide away from the, I don't know, this is not the center. Let's call this the confluence, okay, of the ribs. And if you slide it up to a certain point, you will be able to gently actually depress this segment. Okay, and then you can actually slip the nipple underneath the rib. Do you see that? So I did that, and now all of a sudden the nipple is on the other end, right here. Hopefully you can appreciate that. Now the nipple is on this end versus the bottom end. This is, by the way, not the end of the world. If you wind up in this position, that's okay too, but it does make it easier again if you can put it down below here. So again, we're going to slide. You have a little bit of depression here, and then move it to the right part. So now the nipple is again below the rib. So using this technique, you're able to work it because, again, depending on where you are and where the other nipple is right here, as you make it close to the other rib here, it will move it so that you can actually have some give here. You can move down, you can press it down, and then you can slide it from one quadrant to the other. So please use those techniques. Using that technique, you should be able to pretty freely rotate the inner core to wherever position you want. You want to get it to this position. So for like the 19th time in a row, the thin rib right here, the only thin rib, only thin part, okay? You follow it up here. By the time it gets to here, it's made back its 0.5 millimeter thickness. It's normal now. You can't tell. This is exactly the same on all sides. So this is the one area that's thin. Get the nipple right below that, give or take, and then Hanayama EQUA on this side, okay? So again, I'm gonna let you orient it so you can see where everything is. There's the engraving, the nipple, the thin rib. So we're about 15 minutes into it, and we haven't even done the moves yet, but this is so important because this is the position. With this position, you don't have a fighting chance. Okay. So at this point, I want you to move this over, and you are going to disarticulate the inner two C-arms, just like so. As you twist it toward the middle, right around the middle here, right around here, it's going to come apart. And then I want you to put the Hanayama engraved C-arm, and you're going to put it over your thin rib right here, okay? So this is where it's going to live. Now, at this point, you are going to need to rotate the other open end of the C-arm. The other C-piece has to go into this rib here. That's the big one. So how are you going to do this? You're going to have to let it sit. Now, as you can see, my rib here is in the wrong place. It's in the other quadrant. You don't really want that. You want that little nipple down here into this quadrant. So we're going to have to try to make that happen. So excuse me while I try to do that. Okay, so now you can see the nipple is below the thin rib, okay? And then while we just kind of loosely let the engraved C kind of just sit here on this rib, this is the thin end right there, we're gonna have to rotate it, keeping the nipple in this region, keeping the nipple in the quadrant below the thin rib. We're going to rotate it and play with it so that the other open end is attached to here. Okay, come on, baby. You can see I'm trying to rotate this thing up here. Okay, and little by little, don't force, okay? You can't force it. Just try to twist it. Do you see how this nipple is still in the quadrant below the thin rib, right? If this nipple is in this quadrant, that's what gives you the space to rotate this thing up. So it's gonna, this thing here, this nipple started over here, if you remember, right? And somehow, and because of this maneuvering, we've now twisted it all the way down here, We're going to continue to twist until we get into this particular configuration, okay? We're doing it. Okay, boom. Let's stop and let's reevaluate. So with that sequence of motions, again, this is the thin rib, all right? The thin part. The Hanayama C piece with the open arm of the C, the open end of the C, it is still open into the thin rib from here. That's where it is. And now we've rotated the other C piece onto the normal rib adjacent to it. Okay, so here we go. Thin rib, normal rib, unengraved C piece with the open end now on the normal rib, and the engraved C piece with the open arm across the thin rib. Let's take a moment for you to appreciate this configuration. This is movable, this is right here, okay? Now, here's the kicker. We're doing this as an intermediary orientation step because eventually we need to have this piece, the unengraved C piece, we need to have this actually onto this rib. So you're gonna move it from here to here while keeping this over the thin rib. Okay, so how are we gonna do this? Notice that here there is a little bit of an angle right here, okay? There's an angle here, and that gives you a little bit more give along this thin rib here. We're gonna drop this bad boy down, and in order to get this to here, we're going to twist it clockwise. So it's gonna move from here to here. It's not gonna move the other way, it's gonna go clockwise, it's gonna go clockwise into this piece. So here we go, we're gonna drop this. And we're gonna drop it, and then we're gonna twist, and then we're going to hopefully move it onto here. This part's a little bit tricky because it doesn't want to. Initially, when you're doing it, you're going to think that it's not, you can't get the geometry. But again, if you move this gently and you twist it gently, you're going to get it here. Okay, so boom. Let us again reassess. So now, hopefully you can appreciate the fact that we have now moved the unengraved C piece previously where it was here, we've now rotated it to here. And our engraved C piece is still around the thin rib. Again, thin rib, normal rib, normal rib. This piece was on this normal rib. We dropped it, rotated it clockwise, moved it back up, and now it's around the other normal rib. This engraved Hanayama piece has always been around the thin rib, never ever moves from the thin rib, okay? Okay, so now, the next step is you see this opening here? We want to rotate this opening inward, and this is gonna be a little bit tricky. You're going to slide it while maintaining this position. You're gonna slide this all the way over. You wanna go as far over as you can, okay? It's gonna be stopped here. If you try to rotate out too far, it won't be able to rotate, it'll be stuck. But if you rotate it, if you move it all the way here, you are going to be able to gently, by wriggling, gently, you're going to be able to take this the C opening and you're going to move it right here. So now the nipple right here, the nipple of the engraved C piece is now facing out. Remember that this is the thin rib, okay? So thin rib right here, thin rib, normal rib. Here's the other unengraved C piece. And now the opening's back here. Why do we want to move to take the opening from here and rotate it to the backside? Because we're gonna want to pull this whole thing out. We're gonna want to essentially pull it out of the thin rib now. And this is why it's so critical that this area here is thin, because if it's not thin, you can't do any of these moves. So again, you're not gonna be able to pull it out just like that. You're gonna have to play with it. you're gonna have to wriggle it, and again, if you move it all the way to like to the left where it can't go anymore. See, this is trying to move on me. We don't want that. Okay, so maintain this position here, and we're trying to wriggle it free. Okay, you're gonna move it. You're just trying to figure out how to get this thing off of that thin rib. Okay, this is what we're trying to move this out of. It's close. I can feel it. Just trying to show you where we're going to be here. So we're still in, we're in good position. It's just a matter of wriggling it out. This is where a little bit of patience is key. Aha, there it is. Do you see that? So you're just playing with it, and all of a sudden it came right off. This is the thin rib right here. Okay, I'm looking at it from the other end. This is the thin rib, and you see how this opening came right off. So again, to orient you, thin rib right here, the thick rib, this is where the unengraved C piece was, and now we have taken the engraved C piece and delivered it off of the thin rib. So now this is essentially only connected to the other C piece like this. Now that you've released the whole complex, all you have to do is rotate the unengraved C arm with this opening. You rotate it until it's right here. You can rotate this however you want, and it should just come right out, okay? So again, trying to show you again, it was like this before, but now that you've delivered it from the crux up here, when there's all this business here, it's a lot looser. It's easy to just kind of switch it around so the opening is to the back, and then you just kind of wriggle it free, okay? So here we go. Okay, whatever it takes here. There you go. Okay, so now it's out. So now we've delivered the core away from the frame. At this point, it is important to continue to maintain the orientation. I'm going to repeat again. Thin rib, normal rib, normal rib. Keep this here. Remember that this is where the thin rib is. It's going to be important to put this thing back together again. And then we're going to put it down for now, okay? Out of the way. So now let's focus on separating the two C pieces. Hold it so that the C, is like this, right? There's a C, EQUA here, Hanayama up top. And then this thing I think was like this. This is how you pulled it out, okay? So all you gotta do is you got to take this and then just rotate it until the nipple is facing to your left. And hopefully I don't embarrass myself here, okay. Do I have this right? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, this is, okay, so never mind. Let's orient again. Engraved C, Hanayama up top, EQUA below. This is how you pull it out. Nipple is toward the right. All you gotta do is slide it this way. Okay, so there's a gap, you put it through. So again, nipple on the unengraved C toward the right. There'll be a gap, you slide it through all the way, you go like that, okay? And now the nipple is continues to be on the right. At this point, turn it around so the nipple is to our left, and this comes all the way out. And so now you have finished the puzzle, so to speak. I'm going to back up. So here we go. EQUA puzzle done. Okay, so here we go. Sorry about that. Yeah, if you do it this way, you can't even get it in. So that's a little bit easier. So all you have to do, again, the two C's next to each other, you put it back in like this. Now the nipple is facing to the left, right? Then you turn it around so the nipple is facing to the right. And then, you see that? Nipple facing to the right, before it was the left. And then you push that all the way through this way. So now you have the engraved C, you have the non-engraved C all the way through with the nipple to the pointing to the right. So I'm going to do that again in case you didn't catch that, and we're going to take our time with it so you know exactly how to get this in the right orientation, okay? So here we go. Engraved C, non-engraved C, nipples to the left. Turn it this way so that you can put it through the opening of our engraved C. When you put it through, you can't advance anymore. You have to take it and rotate it so that the nipple now, instead of facing to the left, is facing to the right. So now we got one nipple to the right, one nipple to the left. In this orientation, you are now able to then push it all the way through. This is the actual planet itself, by the way, what it's going to look like when you finally reassemble and you push all the way here, okay? So now you have, again, the orientation you need to get down to business. Take a look again. Engraved C, non-engraved C, you have this little ledge facing up. Nipple here to the right. Pick up your frame. Hopefully you put it down in a fashion so that you know exactly where the thin rib is. I'm going to tell you again, the thin rib is here. Thin rib, normal rib, normal rib. So how are we going to do this? Remember that the unengraved C goes into the normal rib first, okay? Once it's in the normal rib, you need to turn it around so that the opening is facing out and it gets into its position here, kind of cradling the rib in the center. This is the thin rib, the key to everything. What goes around the thin rib, guys? You know it, it's the Hanayama C, right? So the opening is here, you need to twist it, and you need to get this thing through that thin rib, okay? So here we go. We're going to put it against that thin rib, we're going to push gently, and now we're in, okay? We're in all the way. So now the Hanayama C, that open C part is now through the thin rib. This is around the regular rib. Once it's through, we're going to kind of gently seat it. It's seated now. Again, you can see how it kind of moved down. So now the open C portion of the unengraved is around the regular rib, and now we have the Hanayama piece all the way through the thin rib. At that point, we're going to gently rotate so that the opening of the C is facing out, okay? So now we're here. Again, thin rib. Where is this thing around? This thing is around the thin rib. This thing is around the regular rib. We now want to take this and rotate this onto the other thick rib, right? Remember, to disassemble, we had to go from the upper to the bottom. Now we're going to go backwards from the bottom to the upper one. So how are we going to do that? So I advise to just kind of get this a little bit loose. Don't force. It's going to have to go here this way. This bad boy here has to drop. So let's drop it. Okay, now at this point, I have to talk about that nipple again, okay? There's a nipple on the back side. This nipple, you want this nipple to be in this quadrant. So this is not going to be the easiest thing, but let's drop it just like that. And this is going to take a little bit of doing. Okay, you have to manipulate sometimes the engraved C. You have to drop both of them down. You got to drop it in order for you to move this thing and wriggle it around. You have to twist it. Again, this nipple, we want this nipple to be in this quadrant so we can rotate it up, okay? We're gonna rotate it counterclockwise. So not easy to do. Okay. Here it is. I hope you can see that this nipple is down, okay? Sometimes you do have to create that space. Again, just be patient. There should be no forcing. Okay, here it goes. It fell, and now it's rotating. It's rotating. We're gonna rotate it up and get it up here, boom, okay? So here we go. So again, you saw how I took this, I dropped it, and then I rotated it counterclockwise, and then brought it back up. So now the non-engraved C piece is up, cradling the normal rib. It was on the normal rib down here. We've now switched it down counterclockwise to this area. Before, to disassemble, we had to drop this down clockwise up. Now we released it from this rib, dropped it down, wriggled it underneath the thin rib, then brought it back up. So now the non-engraved C is cradling the normal rib up top. What's this rib here, guys? It's the thin rib. And what is cradling the thin rib? Our engraved C, right? Again, at this point, thin rib, normal rib, perfect position, perfect position. We now need to reapproximate this with this. This nipple becomes very important, okay? So at this point, we need this nipple to be in this quadrant below the thin rib. We don't want this nipple to be up top. So let's drop this again. And then start rotating. Okay, get this nipple. This nipple is in the right quadrant for sure. We just have to mess with it a little bit. Because we want that to eventually lock in. See how this nipple went from here all the way up? We're going to rotate it all the way this way. Okay, right here. And then we're going to want it to seat it in here. Okay. That's going to come together. They're going to come together right here. Boom. Okay, so now we've recreated the inner core. And where's our nipple? It's down below. We're going to rotate it all the way here. And now, let's check. We've recreated our original starting position. Thin rib, thick rib, or normal rib. So thin rib, normal rib, nipple below the thin rib. And then we're gonna rotate this here, and what do you see? You see the Hanayama EQUA engraved C piece. And if you check the start of the video, this is exactly our orientation. So I'll show you again. Thin rib, normal rib, nipple underneath the thin rib. And if you rotate sideways, you're gonna see the Hanayama and the EQUA there, okay? I apologize for the last move may not have made it completely clear. Again, it's really hard to do when you have the black metal. It kind of obscures. It's like black metal here, black metal there. But just know that once you have that other C arm here, you have to somehow twist it so that the back side of that open C-arm. You have to twist it around before, remember this thing here was up top. So you have to drop it, move it toward the front, get the back here, and then you just reattach. Use this nipple on the back side to guide you. It starts off down here and you want to rotate it all the way up and it attaches. And so this is it. Now, of course, after you have it done, you can just rotate it around, mess things up, etc. You know, you're all set to go. So, and as you do it, of course, this will come apart on the inside. So the key is if you're just screwing around, trying to figure it out without having any direction at all, as you can see, everything is all sort of confusing. It's all sort of symmetrical. And you may very well actually have the move where the rib, the C-arm separates like this, for instance, and then you begin to make your moves. But the problem, of course, is it's over the wrong rib. You know, you're not in the perfect position that I showed you. And if you're not in the perfect position I showed you, you're not going to be able to make much headway because this open arm might be here, for instance, but it's not the thin rib. And if you don't have it in the thin rib, you're just out of luck because you're not going to be able to move it. And so that's, I think, what makes this puzzle one of the hardest puzzles in the entire lineup, is because everything depends on a starting position that is so precise. And it's really, really tricky to find that perfect starting position because it all depends on being able to just manually see where the thin rib is. And I'll be honest with you, like looking at it, I don't know if I can find it again. And so here goes. I mean, I think this is about equal. That definitely looks equal. This looks pretty equal here as well. So, see what I'm talking about now? So how are you going to find the one area that's a little bit thin? I mean, I had to guess. I would guess maybe this is the thin rib right here. But you want to look around just to check. Like here, they all look pretty thick, actually. And then over here, yeah, they all look pretty thick. So it's either here or it's here, and that looks pretty thick. So yeah, if I had to guess, I would guess that this is actually the thin rib right here. Okay, so, and again, you can't rotate this bottom part to where you want it until you figure out where the thin rib is. As it turned out, here's my nipple underneath the thin rib, and then here's the engraved C with the Hanayama and the EQUA. So again, this is back to perfect position. This is what you're going to use to then move forward. To disengage the two pieces, right? You slide it here, and then when you slide here, boom, you've disengaged. And now, time to rock. Okay, we're back to the disassembly. So there you go. Hope that you found that somewhat useful. There is so many YouTube videos showing this, but this is like literally 3 times as long. And so if I'm trying to just basically make this video for anybody else who is as maybe a newbie like myself, or who needs a lot more explicit instruction to get this out, because this is a tremendously challenging puzzle to solve. And I had to look at multiple YouTube videos to kind of freeze frame and look, because they went through it so quickly, and you can't say that about me. I went through this about as slow as you can get and did it for you. So hopefully that'll be of some use to those of you who are going to get this. This is definitely worth your $12. It's a really neat puzzle, very tactile, and once you know how to solve it, it is pretty enjoyable. And so I definitely recommend getting it. Just be prepared to spend some time and effort and practice. And hopefully, again, this video helped out. So until next time, take care. Bye-bye.